So, today I want to talk about smoke season in Seattle. Now, as with most other extreme weather events, wildfires are starting to become an all too common occurrence. And this is especially true in the western United States. With the effects of climate change, we've seen higher temperatures, which means that more water gets absorbed into the atmosphere. Add to that consistent droughts, bringing about increasingly arid conditions in an environment with a lot of trees, and wildfires just seem to become an inevitability and part of a new normal. And these wildfires have had many repercussions, especially in terms of plant and animal life, but additionally in terms of economic impacts on things like crops. And of course, in a cyclical manner, the release of all this carbon dioxide into the atmosphere has further polluted the climate, making this even worse. That said, the smoke from these wildfires has been severely affecting the air quality over the city of Seattle. And it's become such a common occurrence that people are starting to refer to it as a new type of season, namely a smoke season. Now, we have here from the Seattle Times. It certainly feels like wildfire smoke now visits Seattle like an annual plague. When examining the data between August 1st and October 31st over the previous 20 or so years, we find some really scary data that shows that there's been a massive increase in the amount of unhealthy air days. Now, between 2000 and 2016, there was at most two unhealthy air days in a year, and those only affected the most sensitive groups. However, between 2017 and 2022, 5 of the years have had at least 10 unhealthy or bad air days, and many of those days were extremely unhealthy whether you were sensitive to bad air or not. Now, according to the article, it's not your imagination. The cloaking smoke of the past few weeks has become a new normal, one with an apocalyptic feel. The EPA long ago classified wildfire smoke as an exceptional event, but that is clearly no longer the case. And so, yeah, that is clearly no longer the case, especially when we see this massive increase. And in 2022, we've seen 13 days with bad air, and two of them with very unhealthy air. And that doesn't even count the five extremely unhealthy air days in 2020. So, all this bad air is caused by sooty particulates being put into the air through these wildfires. And while this was a common thing in the wintertime due to wood burning stoves in the region, it's not really something that you're used to seeing in Seattle during the late summer, early autumn. Now, all of this, of course, was predicted by climate researchers that rising temperatures would lead to more Western fires that burn longer and with greater intensity. It's startling how quick it's become a part of life, altering the rhythms of summer itself. Things like the outdoor recreational industry has completely just recalibrated around it, as festivals and everything have just completely shifted in ways that have worked around these smoke based events. Now, furthermore, when we look into where this smoke is coming from, in 2017 and 2018, smoke events were mostly due to drifting down from the British Columbia forest fires. The 2020 smoke season came from the south, from epic fires that scorched California and more than 1 million acres in Oregon. The result was a supermassive plume as large as Oregon itself, collected over the ocean, coming back ashore in September of 2020 to blanket western Washington in what state air quality officials dubbed a smokestorm. Now, this is really demonstrates the fact that extreme weather events in one area can have a significant and huge impact on another. The truth is, we're all connected in this, and the climate crisis is not going to stop at borders. When you have events happening in Alaska, in British Columbia, California, and Oregon, they will deeply impact areas that surround it, like Seattle. And when you have all of these different areas having them within short spans of time of one another, Seattle seems to be at the center point of all of it and seems to be collecting the smoke. And these borders, again, do not create or express the reality of how climate impacts people's lives. Now, when we look through all of this, I also want to point out that since we now understand the increase in smoke and how much it's increasing and where that smoke is coming from, I want to talk about some of the most at risk populations and what the effects of this smoke actually are. Now, when we look at the state of Washington's health department, we find that the asthma rates in the state of Washington are actually through the roof. In Washington, more than 600,000 people have asthma, nearly 120,000 of these are children. More than 5,000 people with asthma are hospitalized each year, and nearly 100 people die each year of asthma. Now, according to the US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, they identified Washington's asthma prevalence as among the highest in the nation and steadily increasing, probably due to a lot of this wildfire smoke. Now, more than 500,000 adults in 120,000 youth in Washington currently have asthma, and about 1 in 8 women and 1 in 14 men also currently have asthma. And between 8 and 11% of children in middle school and high school currently have it. Now, looking a little bit further at some of the at risk populations, we have a lot of company here. These are the people who are considered sensitive to the smoke on the days that maybe not everyone else is being affected. In that group are people over 65, children under 18, pregnant individuals, people with lung or heart issues, people working outdoors, people of color, and low income people. According to the State Department of Health's Executive Office of Public Affairs and Equity, and everyone is at risk from particle pollution caused by wildfire smoke, even if you're not in the sensitive group club. Now, there is a bit of concerning information coming out that not everyone is taking this as seriously as they should. While those of us with at higher risk obsessively refreshed air quality sites like AirNow, Purple Air, or IQ Air to figure out if it's safe to even go outside, many others described poor air quality days as beautiful just because the sun was shining, even though the air was not safe to breathe. So just because it's not noticeable that there's smoke in the air, it doesn't mean that the air quality isn't bad. There should be more alerts being put out there for this type of thing, especially in a city like Seattle, where the air quality is really bad on certain days. Meanwhile, this person says, it felt like some of us were gasping for breath, everyone else just had a collective shrug and didn't think anything of it. Now, before the smoke had finally cleared, it was actually determined that some of the worst air in the world was in Seattle on some of the days during this past smoke season. And there were no notifications, no way to represent that for people to actually take the time to stay out of it and stay inside. Further, when we look at the effects of this smoke, we find coughing, trouble breathing normally, stinging eyes, scratchy throats, runny nose, irritated sinuses, wheezing, chest pain, headaches, asthma attacks, tiredness, and fast heartbeats. And these are just the immediate health effects. This doesn't even turn into the long-term effects that it could have towards damaging lungs, causing cancer, and many other factors. And further, wildfire smoke can irritate lungs and affect the immune system, and make you more prone to lung infections, including things like COVID. And when COVID has been going through the spikes that it's been going through, it's unsurprising that a city like Seattle might see an increased tick up over the years when either COVID or other viruses start to affect the respiratory tracts of people there because of the damage that's being caused by these particulates. Now, the trouble is, of course, that this isn't being taken seriously at all by the people outside of the most at risk groups, which seems to be quite a common in our hyper individualistic and capitalist society. Now, when exploring solutions to this, we already know that the root of climate crisis here is capitalism. If you're going to see an end to all of this, we need to see a complete shutdown of things. I've talked about this before. But short of doing that, and short of abolishing the entire system, there are things that can be done to improve people's lives in areas of the world where the air quality is decreasing, and it can be done now. Things like having the city that is experiencing bad air consistently distribute high quality PPE like N95 masks for free. The ability for people to be able to stay at home from work during these hazardous days would certainly increase quality of life, and offering additional hazard pay for those who must travel outside on those days, and additionally create safe spaces with air filters for those who do not have safe air quality available to them. Now, these are obvious and easy solutions that can be implemented right now. The problem is just being able to identify the problem and having it fully explored instead of just accepting that certain days are beautiful just because the sun is out. The reality is that this smoke season in Seattle is just another one of these side effects of climate change and extreme weather events that are just going to increase with time and become a new normal. Much like we've talked about on this channel with toxic dust that's spewing out of some dried lake beds, this could have a profound impact on people's throats and lungs in the long term, including making them susceptible to more viruses like COVID. And unfortunately, this is hardly localized to just Seattle. While Seattle has certainly been one of the worst, we've seen this type of thing happening across the globe. We've seen it across the US West in places like California and Oregon, as well as in Canada and British Columbia, but also we've seen it in parts of Australia and even parts of Siberia. And I'm sure there's tons of other places who receive less media attention where this type of thing is happening all the time. And because it's just not happening in a Western environment, it's not really being covered in the news all too much. It just seems that parts of the globe are going to have to get used to their new smoke seasons and prepare for it by trying to mask, filter air, and accept the fact that carbon dust has become a new normal in their lives. And that's really scary and unfortunate. And the fact that we keep prioritizing the system that we do, that we keep emphasizing capital as the solution when capital has caused the problem, just is inefficient and is not going to solve anything. You cannot solve this with the free market. We need to create systems where the carbon dust in the air is prioritized over profit. So, with that said, if you've learned something here today, consider liking the video, subscribing, and leaving a comment, as well as joining my Discord. If you're in a financial place to do so, and only if you're in a financial place to do so, please do consider supporting me on Patreon, as it goes a long way to helping me produce more content like this, and a lot of political content can be demonetized on YouTube. The links for everything that I mentioned are in the description down below, and with that said, my name is Anarchist Tara. Thank you so much for watching.